President Trump's daughter Ivanka is back on the stand after a short break in court. She's been calm and soft-spoken during her testimony today as the state's final witness in the civil fraud trial against her father, two brothers, and the family company. President Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and Eric Trump all took the stand already, trying to distance themselves from the company's finances.
It was interesting because it's a bit of a theme of what we've seen from Ivanka on the stand today, which is that when she's asked about things from 2011, 2012, she says she really doesn't recall specific details going that far back. Even when shown some emails, she said, you know, I don't remember this email other than you showing it to me now. But significantly, Diane, they have sort of moved now, just now, into the financial statements of her father and the company, the ones that are at the heart of the case, the ones that the judge has now ruled were fraudulent. And Ivanka has done on the stand what her brothers did on the stand, which is to distance herself from those statements. And just to give you her exact words here, she said, I would assume my father had personal financial statements, but those were not something that I was privy to, and it was not something that I was involved in. So very clear from Ivanka on the stand just a few moments ago that she was not responsible, involved in, or privy to the financial statements at the heart of the case here, much like her brothers did.
Okay, so let me ask you something. What do you do when your own daughter, the person you put in the White House, the person you trusted with everything, walks into a courtroom and basically says, yeah, I don't know anything about that? Like, what do you even do with that? Because that's exactly what just happened with Donald Trump. And I'm not talking about some random aide or former staffer throwing him under the bus. I'm talking about Ivanka, his daughter, the golden child, the one who was supposed to be untouchable. She just testified in his massive fraud trial in New York, and she refused to back him up at all. Now, before you think this is just another boring court story, let me tell you why this is absolutely wild. This isn't just about some legal case. This is about the Trump family publicly fracturing in the worst possible way. This is about a $250 million lawsuit that could literally strip Trump of his most iconic properties. We're talking Trump Tower. We're talking his ability to do business in New York at all. And his own daughter just walked into that courtroom, looked at the evidence and said, I don't recall, over 30 times. Can you believe this? But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we build Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. So here's what happened. Ivanka Trump took the witness stand on November 8th, 2023. The Attorney General's office, led by Letitia James, has been going after Trump for years over allegations that he massively inflated the value of his properties to get better loans and tax breaks. They're saying he lied about how much his buildings were worth. They're saying the Trump organization cooked the books. And Ivanka, she was deep in this. She was an executive. She was involved in loan negotiations. Her name is all over internal emails about these deals. But when they put her on that stand, she acted like she barely remembered working there. I don't recall. I wasn't involved in that. I had no role in preparing those financial statements. Like, come on. You were literally negotiating loans for properties in Miami and Washington. Your emails are right there. And you're saying you don't remember? The prosecutors were showing her documents with her own name on them, and she just kept playing dumb, polished, calm, detached, but playing dumb. And here's the thing. This wasn't just some random testimony that nobody cared about. Trump was sitting there, watching. And according to people in the courtroom, he was losing it. One legal analyst described it like this. Trump was fuming. His face was red. He was whispering aggressively to his lawyers. And then the second the court session ended, he stormed out and went on this massive rant about how the whole thing is a witch hunt, how the judge is corrupt, how Letitia James is obsessed with him. But the one person he didn't defend? Ivanka. Because what could he even say? She just undermined his entire defense strategy. His whole argument has been, my financial statements were accurate, my accountants handled everything, I didn't do anything wrong. But Ivanka's testimony basically said, yeah, I was there for some of this, but I'm not taking the fall for it. That's a fracture. That's a crack in the foundation of Trump world, and it's happening at the worst possible time. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but this is just one trial. Does it really matter? Oh, it matters. See, Trump's brand has always been built on two things: loyalty and success. His family is supposed to be this tight-knit unit. They're supposed to have his back, no matter what. That's been the image for decades. The Trumps stick together. Always. But now, his daughter just publicly distanced herself from him. Under oath. In front of cameras. In front of the whole world. And the success part? That's under attack too. This trial could ban him from doing business in New York. It could force him to pay hundreds of millions in penalties. It could take away Trump Tower, the building that literally has his name on it in giant gold letters. So yeah, this matters. Because if Trump loses this case, he's not just losing money, he's losing his identity. The image of the successful businessman crumbles. The image of the loyal family man crumbles. And Ivanka just handed the prosecutors a gift-wrapped piece of evidence that says maybe the Trump organization wasn't as clean as they claim. This is wild. This is messy. And this is just getting started. So stick with me, because we need to dig into what actually happened in that courtroom, why Ivanka's playing this game, and what it means for Trump's future. Because trust me, it's way deeper than you think. And look, I know some of you are probably thinking, why should I care about this? Well, here's why. Because this isn't just about Trump. This is about power. This is about accountability. This is about whether the people at the top actually face consequences for their actions. And right now, we're watching that play out in real time. We're watching a former president, currently serving his second term, potentially lose everything he built. We're watching his family turn on him. We're watching the empire crack. That's historic. That's unprecedented. And yeah, that matters. So let's dive in. Let's talk about what really went down in that courtroom. Let's talk about the evidence. Let's talk about the family dynamics. And let's talk about what comes next. Because this story, it's only getting started. All right, so let's rewind a bit and talk about how we even got here. Because this trial didn't just come out of nowhere. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, has been investigating the Trump organization for years. And I mean years. This goes back to 2019, when she started looking into whether Trump was lying about the value of his properties to get loans, insurance deals, and tax benefits. Now here's how this allegedly worked. Let's say you own a building. You want to get a loan from a bank. The bank says, okay, how much is your building worth? And you say, oh, it's worth $500 million. But in reality, it's worth like $200 million. You just made up a number to get a bigger loan. That's fraud. That's illegal. And that's what the AG is accusing Trump of doing, except on a massive scale across like a dozen properties. We're talking Mar-a-Lago, Trump Tower, golf courses, office buildings, the whole empire. And the financial statements that were sent to banks, they allegedly inflated values by hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars. Like, there's one property, Mar-a-Lago, that Trump valued at over $700 million on his financial statements, but independent appraisers said it was worth more like $75 million. That's not a rounding error. That's just making stuff up. Are you kidding me? That's almost 10 times the actual value. That's not a miscalculation. That's fraud. So the AG filed a lawsuit in 2022 asking for $250 million in penalties and a ban on Trump doing business in New York. In this trial, the one happening right now, is where they're trying to prove it all in court. Now here's where it gets messy, because Trump's defense has been pretty simple. He's saying, I didn't personally prepare these financial statements. My accountants did. I trusted the experts. If there were mistakes, blame them. But the problem with that defense, his kids were executives in the company. Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka all had roles. They were signing off on deals. They were negotiating loans. They were in the meetings. So when the prosecutors called them to testify, they're trying to show that this wasn't just some rogue accountant making mistakes. They're trying to show that the whole family knew what was going on. Don Jr. testified. He basically backed his dad and said he didn't see anything wrong. Eric testified. Same thing. Loyal to the end. But Ivanka, she wasn't on the same page. See, Ivanka technically left the Trump organization in 2017 when she went to work in the White House. So her lawyers argued that she shouldn't even have to testify because she wasn't involved during the time period the AG is focused on. But the judge said no. She was involved in earlier deals. She was part of the company culture. She needs to testify. And when she finally took the stand, she gave them nothing. She testified that she had no involvement in preparing Trump's financial statements. She said she wasn't in charge of valuations. She said she didn't review the numbers that went to banks. Okay, but here's the thing. The prosecutors had emails, internal Trump organization emails, showing Ivanka negotiating loans, showing her coordinating with lenders, showing her discussing property values. And when they showed her these emails, she just kept saying, I don't recall, like over 30 times. I don't recall. I don't remember that. That wasn't my role. It was textbook. Protect yourself. Don't commit to anything. Don't give them ammunition. And legally, that's smart, because if she admits to knowing about inflated values, she could be held liable too. She could face penalties. She could get dragged even deeper into this mess. But politically, optics-wise, it looks terrible, because now the story isn't just Trump's on trial for fraud. The story is Trump's own daughter won't defend him. And after her testimony, Attorney General Letitia James came out and said something pretty pointed. She said Ivanka was cordial, but her testimony raises questions about her credibility. She basically hinted that the evidence shows Ivanka was more involved than she's admitting. That's a prosecutor saying, "We don't believe you." And the courtroom analysts, they were all over this. One legal commentator said Trump completely lost it after Ivanka left the stand. He was reportedly furious, ranting about the judge, ranting about the prosecutors, calling it all a witch hunt. But you know what he didn't do? Defend Ivanka's testimony. Because how could he? She just tanked his defense. Now let's talk about why this is such a big deal, beyond just the legal stuff. Because yeah, the trial matters, but the family dynamic here, that's the real story. Ivanka has always been Trump's favorite. Everyone knows it. She was the polished one, the one who could talk to world leaders, the one who could smooth things over when Trump said something crazy. She was in the White House as a senior advisor. She was at every major event. She was the face of Trump, but make it palatable. And for years, she stuck by him, through scandals, through impeachments, through January 6th. But then something shifted. After January 6th, Ivanka started pulling back. She testified to the January 6th committee in 2022 and basically said she didn't believe the election was stolen. She said she accepted the results. She distanced herself from the whole stop the steal narrative. That was the first crack. And now this, refusing to back him in court, protecting herself instead of the family brand. And you know what? I get it. I actually get why she's doing this, because Ivanka has her own life now. She has her own reputation. She has her own business interests. And if she goes down with Trump, if she gets hit with penalties and bans and legal consequences, her future is done. So she's making a choice. Save herself. Distance herself. Let Trump deal with his own mess. And honestly, can you blame her? But here's the problem for Trump. His whole brand is loyalty. It's family. It's we stick together no matter what. And now his own daughter is jumping ship. That's not just bad legally. That's bad for his image. That's bad for his political future. Because if his own family won't stand by him, why should anyone else? And this is happening right as he's serving his second term. This is happening as Republicans are trying to figure out what the party looks like after Trump. What happens in 2028? Who takes over? And the narrative is shifting from Trump's a fighter to Trump's chaotic, and even his family is bailing. That's a problem. Now let me talk about something else that's important here. The evidence. Because this isn't just he said, she said. The prosecutors have documents. They have bank records. They have appraisals. They have emails. And some of this stuff is damning. Like really damning. For example, Trump claimed his Trump Tower penthouse was 30,000 square feet. That's what he told banks. That's what was on the financial statements. But in reality, it was 11,000 square feet. He literally tripled the size of his apartment on paper and then used that inflated value to get better loan terms. That's not a mistake. That's not an accounting error. That's lying. And there are dozens of examples like this. Properties valued way above what they're actually worth. Assets inflated. Numbers just made up. So when Ivanka sits there and says, "I don't recall, I wasn't involved," the prosecutors are thinking, really? Because your name is all over these deals. And the jury, or in this case, the judge, because this is a bench trial, they're looking at all this evidence and trying to figure out who knew what and when. And Ivanka's testimony didn't help Trump's case at all. So what happens next? Well, the trial's still going. There are more witnesses, more evidence. It could go on for weeks. But the damage from Ivanka's testimony, that's already done. The headlines are out there. The clips are circulating. The story is written. Trump's daughter refused to defend him, and that's going to stick. Okay, so let's break this down into the key points you need to understand, because there's a lot happening here, and it's easy to get lost in all the courtroom drama. But really, it comes down to 4 big things. Point 1, this trial could destroy Trump financially. We're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. The New York Attorney General is asking for $250 million in penalties. That's $250 million. And on top of that, they want to ban Trump from doing business in New York. Think about what that means. Trump Tower, that's in New York. A huge chunk of his real estate empire, New York. His whole brand identity, built on New York. If he loses this case, he could be forced to sell properties. He could lose control of his businesses. He could be banned from ever doing a real estate deal in the state again. And yeah, Trump's rich. He's got assets, but a $250 million penalty plus losing the ability to operate in one of the biggest markets in the country, that's devastating. This is wild. So this isn't just some annoying lawsuit he can brush off. This is existential for his business empire. And Ivanka's testimony didn't help because the prosecutors are trying to show a pattern of fraud, a culture of lying about property values. And when Trump's own daughter distances herself from the financial statements and says she wasn't involved, that makes it look like even the family knew something was wrong. It's not proof, but it's a bad look. And in a trial, optics matter. Like imagine you're the judge. You're looking at all this evidence of inflated property values. You're seeing emails and documents. And then Trump's daughter gets on the stand and basically says, yeah, I worked there, but I don't remember anything about these financial statements. That doesn't make you think, oh, she must have been innocent. That makes you think she's trying to distance herself because she knows this looks bad. And that hurts Trump's case. Point 2. The family fracture is real and it's getting worse. Like I said earlier, Trump's brand has always been loyalty. The Trumps are supposed to be this unbreakable unit. Ride or die. All for one and one for all. But that's crumbling. Ivanka testified against his interests in the January 6th hearings. She's doing it again now, in this fraud trial. She's not showing up to political events. She's not defending him in interviews. She's out. And you know what? That's sending a message to everyone else. If Ivanka, the golden child, can walk away, then anyone can. And it's not just Ivanka. There are reports that other former Trump officials and allies are distancing themselves too. People who were ride or die in 2020 are now hedging their bets. They're seeing the legal troubles pile up, and they're thinking, do I really want to go down with this ship? That's a problem for Trump, because his whole political power comes from loyalty, from people believing that he's worth fighting for, that he's worth defending. But if his own family won't do it, why should anyone else? And let's be real, this is happening at a terrible time. We're in Trump's second term. The 2026 midterms are coming. Republicans are trying to hold on to power, and the narrative around Trump is shifting from strong leader to chaotic liability. Ivanka's testimony just added fuel to that fire. And here's another thing. Ivanka's not the only one who's distanced herself. Melania's been pretty quiet. She's not doing the traditional first lady stuff. She's not out there defending him in the press. The whole family seems to be fracturing, splintering, going their separate ways. And that's unprecedented, because the Trumps have always presented this united front. Even when things got messy, they stuck together publicly. But now, that facade is cracking, and everyone can see it. Point 3. This is bigger than one trial. Okay? So yes, this is about the New York fraud case. But it's also about something bigger. It's about accountability. It's about whether Trump can keep dodging consequences forever. Because let's be honest, Trump has been in legal trouble for years, decades, really. And he's always managed to wiggle out of it. Settlements, delays, appeals, lawyers fighting tooth and nail. But this time, it's different. Because this time, the evidence is overwhelming. The financial statements are public. The emails are public. The testimony from accountants and lenders is damning. And this time, his family isn't backing him up. So the question is, does he finally face real consequences? Or does he find a way to escape again? And honestly, I don't know. Because Trump is really good at surviving. He's really good at spinning narratives and playing the victim and rallying his base. But this trial, this is tough. This is New York. The judge doesn't seem sympathetic. The attorney general is relentless, and the evidence is piling up. So we'll see. But the fact that we're even at this point, the fact that his own daughter is distancing herself, that tells you how serious this is. Now let's talk about what this means going forward. If Trump loses this trial, it's not just a financial hit, it's a credibility hit, because his whole identity is wrapped up in being a successful businessman. That's the brand. That's the image. I'm rich. I'm smart. I make great deals. But if a court says, actually, you committed fraud, you lied about your wealth, you inflated your assets to scam banks, that destroys the brand. And politically, that's a disaster. Because Trump's appeal has always been, I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. I know how to get things done, but if the business empire collapses, what's left? And Ivanka's testimony is part of that collapse, because she was supposed to be the proof that Trump built something real, that he raised successful, competent kids, that the Trump organization was legitimate. But now she's saying, yeah, I wasn't really involved. I don't remember the details. That wasn't my job. That's not the message Trump wants out there. Point 4. What this means for Republicans and Trump's legacy. All right, so here's the big picture question. What does all of this mean for the Republican Party? What does it mean for Trump's second term? What does it mean for his legacy? Because look, Trump's still president. He's still in power. He's still got influence. But this trial, this family drama, it's all chipping away at that power. It's all creating this narrative of chaos and dysfunction. And Republicans are watching. They're seeing Trump in court. They're seeing his daughter refuse to defend him. They're seeing the legal bills pile up. They're seeing the headlines. And they're thinking, is this really who we want leading the party? Now, Trump's base, they're still loyal. They still love him. They still think this is all a witch hunt. But moderates, independents, people who voted for Trump but aren't diehard supporters, they're starting to have doubts. And that matters, Because if Republicans want to win in 2026 and beyond, they need more than just the base. They need a broader coalition. And Trump's legal troubles, his family troubles, all of this is making that harder. So what happens next? Well, the trial continues. More witnesses, more evidence, and eventually a verdict. If Trump loses, he'll appeal. Obviously, he'll drag this out for years if he can. But the damage is done. The story is out there. And Ivanka, she's probably done with all of this. She's moved on. She's in Florida, living her life. She's not coming back to save him. And honestly, I think that's the smartest move she could make. Because Trump's legal problems are only getting worse. There are other cases, other investigations, other potential issues. And Ivanka's looking at all of that and saying, nope, not my circus, not my monkeys. Can you blame her? I mean, yeah, it's her dad, but it's also her future, her reputation, her freedom, potentially. So she's choosing herself. And Trump, he's on his own. And you know what? That's the story here. Not just the fraud, not just the trial, but the fact that Trump's inner circle is fracturing. The fact that even his own family is walking away. That's the real headline. And that's what's going to define the next phase of Trump's presidency and beyond. Because if he can't keep his own daughter loyal, how does he keep the Republican Party loyal? How does he keep his base energized for 2026? Those are the questions. And right now, nobody has good answers. So here's the bottom line. Ivanka Trump testified in her father's fraud trial. She refused to back him up. She distanced herself from the financial statements. She said, I don't recall over 30 times. Trump was furious. The prosecutors were thrilled. And the whole world watched as the Trump family publicly fractured. This trial could cost Trump $250 million and his ability to do business in New York. It could destroy his brand. It could define his legacy. And his own daughter just made it worse. That's where we are. That's the story. And it's only going to get messier from here. All right, so that's where we're at. Ivanka testified. She distanced herself. Trump's furious. The trial's still going. And the Trump family brand is fracturing in real time. This is messy. This is unprecedented. And this is only going to get more intense. So stay tuned, because this story is far from over. And trust me, the next twist is going to be just as wild. We're watching history unfold. We're watching power crumble. We're watching a family implode. And it's all happening in real time, right in front of us. This is what accountability looks like. This is what happens when the empire starts to crack. And Ivanka, she's already chosen her side. She chose herself. Now we wait to see what happens to Trump.